Confidence isn't just standing in a power pose with your hands on your hips, thrusting your pelvis forward with your looking someone directly in the eye with a powerful gaze and a firm handshake. That's not what confidence is. Those are just. I mean, I'm not even sure if that is a possible symptom of confidence. I think it might be a symptom of derangement.
But it's definitely something else, that's for sure. Hi, I'm Miles Emanuel.
I'm Jonah Ross.
This is the Sales Pro Podcast, your weekly podcast to make sales sexy.
Every week we give you real-life examples, time-tested techniques and world-class interviews with leading experts to transform your sales and bring you unstoppable, long-lasting results.
So, today's episode is about...
rapport. What Google won't tell you.
The hidden secrets.
Hidden secrets. Well, rapport is one of these things that's really well written about online. You know,
Right.
there's lots of information out there, and a lot of it's good. You know, the whole NLP scene, they were very vocal about it.
Right.
But these are all, they're kind of old hat now, and so we thought, well, there are still missing pieces of the puzzle, and we didn't want this to be just another episode where you could, go onto Google and read it in 30 seconds. We wanted to give you something a bit unique.
Right, and it's also what Google says is quite vague as well. I mean, literally just pulled this off. It says, be genuine. Before the first day of school, first jobs, camp, and any family get-together, Dad always said, just be yourself, and everything will be fine.
Great advice.
Fantastic, solid.
But it's really vague, and
Extremely, I mean, even just the whole, be yourself. What does that... Because we hear this all the time, just, be confident, be yourself, be genuine, be authentic.
Authentic is a buzzword at the minute, isn't it?
Yes.
It's part of the information. You don't want to be disingenuous, you don't want to be fake, you don't want to be deceptive. Those are bad things, we can all agree. I hope. That's what I think. And yes, it's good to be authentic. But there are more details that can be dug out. But before we get to the point of, techniques and things that you can do for rapport, we're going to talk about clearing out the obstacles to being able to build rapport and influence people. Because it's all well and good having, great techniques or having a perfect strategy to be able to do something. But if you've got some kind of blockage in your head or some ideas that are holding you back from being able to use it,
Right.
then you could have 10 times that amount of technique and it's not going to do you any good.
Exactly. This is literally the machine, all the cogs in the wheel, and yet you've got a spanner in the works just jamming up the cogs. And if your internal state is completely wrecked, then how are you going to present yourself outside is just going to be a complete mess.
Exactly. So this first kind of spanner in the wheels or spanner in the cogs, however we'd word it. How would you word it? Salt in the engine?
Salt in the engine?
Yeah, that's what you do to sabotage a car, isn't it? Salt?
No,
sand in the engine?
No,
sand in the gearbox?
Sand. Okay. You're just making it something, aren't you?
I don't know. I've never been a saboteur. I've just heard stories.
Sawdust.
Yeah. So whatever things mess up engines, right? The first thing we're going to talk about is this idea of being yourself. And that may sound a strange thing to say, but if you think about it, being yourself, your only reference of who you are is all the things that you've been able to do, think, and achieve up until this point.
Exactly.
Now, if up until this point you've not been able to get the sales results that you desire, then how is being the person who has been unable to be a highly successful sales pro, how is being that person going to change your results for today or for tomorrow? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. You're literally just limiting yourself to what you've already done in the past. I mean, if you think back to a time, past version of yourself, let's say 5 years ago, think back to a time in your past, 5 years from now, ask yourself, are you the same person? Do you have the same ideas? Do you have the same values? Do you have the same knowledge?
No, most people won't. Just conversation. I'm sure most of us have had these conversations where it goes, oh, think back to such and such an age when you're 18, when you were 6. Oh, man, I was such a different person.
Right.
I'm a completely new person now. So this idea of identity, we already know it's not fixed in stone. We already know that it grows. And so the idea of sticking ourselves and going, oh, hey, I have to be true to myself, well, you can end up being true to a part of you that's actually out of date. And so it's important to be able to take on a new identity. We'll speak about this as time goes on. But to be able to let go of the idea that you have to be consistent with everything from your past. Because if your past had more failure than success in it, that's not something you want to be consistent with, right? Consistency isn't always a good thing.
Right, and even the fact is that if you say, this is who I am, or I could never be this, or that's not me, you need to actually watch out for these self-identity labels, because these are all what we call limiting beliefs. Now, those limiting beliefs aren't serving you. Your self-identity and how you come across when you're with your friends is going to be completely different when you are at work with your boss, and how you interact with your family, and even how you interact with yourself when you think no one's watching. Mm.
I'll edit out that little pervy.
I don't.
I interact with myself. Right. Yeah. So it's not set in stone, which means that you can change it at will. So something to be mindful of when we're going into these situations where you want to build rapport, where you want to be influential, is that if there's that little voice in the back of your mind, if there's that idea of, oh, I'm not a confident person, oh, I've failed at this in the past, so I've never been successful at this, I can't do this. Those are just ideas. And they're a limiting belief. But the nice thing is that it's not objectively true. It's just something you're thinking. Which means that if you think it, as we speak about quite a lot, there's that confirmation bias thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We think it strongly enough, and then we will direct things to prove ourselves right. So thinking about those negative beliefs and having them there, those are a big obstacle to people being able to implement these tools on rapport and any of the other techniques that they're learning. If you're listening to this podcast, the chances are you listen to others as well, or you read other documents, you watch videos, you improve yourself. You're learning how to implement these skills. And so being able to get past these ideas, these obstacles, will speed up your progress immensely.
And let's also remember that limiting beliefs, not only on yourself, but also on that you pass on to other people as well.
Yeah, like the idea of, oh, if I speak to that person, they won't like me, they won't listen to me, they don't want to hear what I have to say.
You're being selfish again.
How
dare you? See, and you've just boxed them in. So you're putting your own... you're so insecure that you're putting your insecurities onto other people.
Right.
And then when you say, that person will never like me, you go up to that person, you're thinking, this person will never like me. Guess what? They don't like you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I knew they wouldn't like me.
See, I was right.
Of course you'd be right.
I don't even have to try in the future. I already know I'm psychic. I can predict this stuff.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it does not serve you in the slightest.
That's true. And it's a good point. Limiting beliefs aren't always about ourselves. It is sometimes about other people too. Who's going to buy? Or, oh, there's no money in the market. People don't have money. There's a recession, or there will be a recession, or there was once a recession. Or people have bills to pay. They really can't afford this kind of thing. All those things are just ideas. And what it really is an excuse. Is that there's this fear, the insecurity, the fear of rejection or whatever it might be. That's the feeling inside us when we're feeling that way. And instead of owning it and saying, I feel this way, that'd be a bit too raw. That's a bit too direct. And so we have to go, well, it's their fault. They wouldn't buy anyway, so there's no point me even trying. And it takes the pressure off us psychologically. Yeah. So that's something to be aware of too.
We should also talk about when Google tells you to be confident. Now, when people see confidence, because let's define confidence, that comes from trust through repeated action, doesn't it?
Yeah. Confidence isn't just standing in a power pose with your hands on your hips, thrusting your pelvis forward with your looking someone directly in the eye with a powerful gaze and a firm handshake. That's not what confidence is. Those are just... I mean, I'm not even sure if that is a possible symptom of confidence. I think it might be a symptom of derangement.
But it's definitely something else, that's for sure.
Yeah, these external things, act confident, stand confident. Yeah, body language is important, but wouldn't you prefer, instead of having to fake the external posturing of confidence, instead of having to be fake, if you could feel it on the inside so that you're just being the kind of person and feeling that way naturally, so that it becomes an automatic process to act that way. It's so much easier. True confidence comes through that trust that you have for yourself. And the trust is built through taking repeated, consistent action.
And you should also think to yourself, or ask yourself, what is your ideal conversation? How, if you had the perfect conversation, it's been amazing. Like, how are you acting? How are you asking your questions? And how are your clients responding? Your potential clients, how are they acting around you? Are they smiling? Are they so enamored by you, by your products? Is it really flowing? Are you like, you're going to be best friends?
What is the quality of the conversation that you really want? When you go in with an idea of the outcome that you're pursuing, that's far better than just going into a situation saying, oh, I hope it works. I hope they like me. It puts all the power in the other person's hand.
Right.
Whereas when you go and deciding what the outcome's going to be, and then determining that you're going to navigate the situation however you can to attain that result, it puts far more control in your side of things. And as the salesperson, as the person who needs to be leading the conversation, that's really where it needs to be.
So we just want to start off this podcast by stating out what your internal you is saying and how we can just unclutter that, because now we can talk about the techniques. I believe that if we're talking about rapport, you probably think about what questions could I be asking. The staple is, and we all do this anyway, we go up to someone, look at them in the eye and say, how are you? I believe that if you want to really make a difference in the world, you really want to impress that person that you're talking to, and you're asking them the same question that the next person will ask them, and the next person, and the next person, you're not going to stand out.
It's boring.
It's completely and utterly boring.
Like they say, don't they, that we don't remember what people do, we remember how they make us feel.
Exactly.
And so if you're asking someone the same questions that they've been asked by 10 people before you, and like Miles said, the next 10 people after you, then you've not differentiated yourself at all. You just made yourself another brick in the wall.
So we're going to tell you all the techniques that we use to generate rapport.
Maybe not all of them, there's a few trade secrets, but we'll tell you some good ones. Let's start with state control.
State control.
Yeah. So Miles, what would you say that is? How does state control apply in the situation of building rapport?
In terms of state control, I've always looked at it as it's a dance of rapport. So you kind of imagine your ballroom partner dancing along with you, perfectly in tune with each other. You may go slowly and surely, just testing each other out, seeing where their feet position is, where their hand position. Are you holding them too hard? Holding them too close? Or you done? Fine. And it's all just flowing naturally and beautifully as well. And when you're out of rapport, that's when your partner or you start stepping on each other's toes, and it hurts. And you think, why are they doing that? Or why they just say this? And when you keep stepping on each other's toes, that's when that rapport is broken and you find a different dance partner.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and so as the sales pro, as the influencer, you are the one who needs to be leading the dance. You need to be the leading person, the authority, and show them where they need to go.
Right. And that's not just in the obvious ways like sign on this dotted line here. It starts inside yourself. So a nice way I've heard rapport described, it's like breaking down the walls that separate you and another person. So the more rapport you're feeling with someone, the less of a separation there is. It gets to the point, if you've been in a long-term relationship, you probably had the experience where, you can finish each other's sentences. You can pick up when the other person's not feeling good. You almost feel something inside yourself when they're in a bad mood or when they're in a happy mood. And so that's what rapport is. And so like we say, rapport is a two-way street, which means that when you get someone in rapport with you, that's not the end. A lot of these kind of courses and trainings, they treat, build rapport as if that's the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, only at the beginning you can build rapport, and then that's it.
I've been at so many courses and people say, so this rapport building thing, when do I do it? I'm like,
All the time.
But it's not just about getting into rapport with someone. That's like you've got a tow bar or a towing rope, and you go and you clip it to the other person. That's building rapport. But then what you do with it, that's what's important. And the best way to do it is to actually, in view of the fact that we share those feelings, we're sharing each other's state, take your state into the place that you want them to go. So how do you want them to feel when they're talking to you? Presumably friendly, open, trusting, curious. How else would it be? Like enthusiastic, connected. I'm just making stuff up now, but how you would want them to be feeling when they're talking to you. If you start feeling that way of your own will, of your own volition, that then you begin charging the environment with that. You begin charging the people you're speaking to with that. Have you ever spoken to someone who, like, they're so happy it's contagious, or they're so miserable it's contagious?
Yeah, they just come in and they just light up a room, or they just come in and they just absolutely bring the whole place down. What's
the Oscar Wilde quote? Some people bring joy wherever they go, and other people cause joy whenever they go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we know people like that. And that's an example of someone coming into a situation and their state control, they're not thinking about it most likely, but their state is so powerful that it spreads to other people. So when you can use that mechanism to influence someone else, then you're changing them from the inside out. That then lends so much power to any words you're saying, any techniques you're applying, that it just makes life so much easier and smoother for you.
Exactly.
But how do you do that?
Right. If you're able to master your emotions, if you're able to master and control your states, that would be through a technique called priming.
Priming. Yeah. This is something I've played with a lot over the years, just for myself. But the common belief is really that our feelings and our emotions, they're the result of what's happening around us or to us. And so if you want to feel like you're having fun, you might wear certain clothes, go to a party, go to a club. Or if you want to feel calm, you'll put on some calming music. Or if you want to create an intimate, amorous feeling with someone, then, you might set up a romantic candlelit dinner. Does anyone even do that anymore? I mean, I do, obviously, but, does I'm a proper gentleman. But
absolutely.
We'll just put a pin in that one. I'm not sure if that still happens, but it used to happen. My grandparents spoke about it. And
what's interesting, actually, is that the party you, the want to curl up and listen to good music you, romantic you, wait, aren't these all self-identities?
Yeah, they're all different parts of you. They're
all
you
different.
In different states.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And so you can access those different parts by changing the external things. That's what we're used to. But what's really interesting is that you can start those feelings, or any feeling in fact, without the external props being necessary. And the way you do that is by using your brain and directing your thoughts deliberately. Because if you think about it, if you had to be financially hugely successful in order to feel successful, then that could take forever.
Right.
You're solely you're dependent on this outcome outside of yourself in order to feel good, which is a disempowered state to be. On the other hand, if you could feel that way first, then the chances of you following through on that, like we said before, the confirmation bias, if you feel successful, if you feel like a go-getter, if you have the emotions and the feelings inside yourself of someone who's enthusiastic and loving their work and delivering to a high level and really enjoying connecting with the people you're speaking to, people who are speaking to you, then you're going to go into environments, go into interactions with a very different approach. So, Miles, how would you go about priming yourself for success?
Very simply. I just think back...
That's such a cocky response. How would you do it? Simply. So how could you help me? Easily. Sorry, carry on.
So, well, thanks for that.
You can keep that.
Whatever. Fine. Well, it's very hard. Is that what you wanted to say?
I don't need to know that much.
Okay, fine. Well, Here's something that you can do on a serious note. This is something that you can do. And you just think about the times when you were really confident or when you were really energetic. So that might be a time when, you're going to the gym, you felt really confident, you felt really energetic, or maybe you get confident, energetic by reading a good book. If you just look back to your past and just think of a time, it needs to be the strongest you ever felt. And when we think of being really confident and really energetic, it triggers the associated thoughts and parts of our brain to light up. So if you think about something that's really confident in the past of your life, and then you can transfer that, if you can apply that to when you're meeting someone new for the first time, and think about how interesting or how excited you can be when you're about to go on a new venture. It's a new uncharted territory. You're Christopher Columbus or Columbo. Try to be inspirational, but I don't know his name. If you were that guy going around finding new territories,
how would that feel?
How would that feel? It's so exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, the first global thief. Oh, that was the Vikings, whoever it was. Sorry, and thinking about how you want to feel in this situation enables you. So confident, energetic. Those are great states to go into it. Also, have you ever had the situation where you speak to someone and you've just clicked instantly and it's just gone really well and it was an awesome conversation?
Just have a special connection. Almost magnetic. You think like, wow, who is this person? He tells like the greatest stories, or she is just absolutely amazing. Like, what is her, that? She has such charisma.
Yeah, and even better, the times when someone else has felt that way about you. It doesn't have to be a sales scenario, it can be anything, but a time when you've had a really good rapportful?
We'll make up words now.
Just made up a word.
Well, there you go.
A really good high rapport interaction. When you think about that, how does that feel? When you can get a selection of these memories or these feelings, or just think about the feeling inside yourself, how would it feel if you are having the interactions that you really want? When you can generate these feelings inside yourself, it's activating those parts of your brain, because the brain remembers things and activates through association. They call it schemas, where you think about one thing and then that triggers a bunch of related things. So when you start thinking about what you want, the desired outcomes, so confidence, enthusiasm, connection, success, rapport, it's activating the parts of your brain that you need in order to get that result. So that's priming.
So we've accessed our state and we are able to control it. We've primed our brain so we're ready, we're open, energetic, confident, curious. That all unconsciously transfers onto our clients, or the person that we're talking to, which is amazing.
Right. Humans are basically transmitter receivers. Not to get too woo-woo with it, but it's just the way we work.
Yeah.
However you want to explain it, whether that's with energy or with just simple psychology and social behaviour, it's how we work.
Right.
And so knowing that, now you can actually take control of it.
Now we have all the non-verbals out of the way. What are we actually going to ask? Because we have to ask the right questions. You can't just talk about, the weather's really nice now, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be on point. It has to be relevant. So, Miles, what are the right questions?
Simple. And it really is. Because this is the be-all and end-all. You'll never, ever run out of things to say if you just talk about this one topic for the rest of your life. And that is themselves.
Right.
Everyone's favourite topic is themselves. Uncover the relevant information about them so that you can tailor your offering, your pitch to them and make it relevant.
Exactly. And relevant is the key word here. I've seen a lot of people, they make the mistake of thinking, hey, if I get in rapport with this client by finding out all about, oh wow, they went on fishing trips as a teenager. Oh wow, they used to love such and such a band. That's not rapport in, Like it is, but it's not what you're looking for.
Right. You have an outcome. You have an aim.
Right.
Which we'll talk about soon.
Yeah, you're looking to actually serve this person by turning them into a client. And so finding out about their fishing trip, unless you're selling fishing trips, is probably not that relevant. So it's thinking about the information that is important for you to find out in order to tailor it to them, in order to make your offering relevant to that person as much as possible.
Because you want to screen who you are looking for and elicit the information so that you can tell them how your business applies to them. Because the more relevant it feels, the more likely they are to commit to taking that next step with you and your business. Because if you ever just make people feel interesting,
right,
then that feels that you are generally interested in them and that you've really heard them. So, they're more likely to, believe that what you're offering them is actually right for them, because you've tailored your message to their needs, to their wants, to their values. There's actually an interesting story in the 19th century with the Prime Minister elections in the UK.
Back in the good old days. And it was the story of Benjamin Disraeli, if you've heard of him. Very interesting character, you see. Now, Benjamin Disraeli and William Gladstone were competing for the position of Prime Minister in the UK. And these two leaders went down in history, but their personalities couldn't be even more contrasting than they were. Now, you see, William Gladstone was an extremely clever person. He was brilliant. And he pretty much knew everything. Right? And based on his wit and experience, he was the person that was most likely to win that election. Now, what made the difference, however, was summed up by Jenny Jerome, who was Winston Churchill's mother. And she had dinner with both Disraeli and Gladstone a week before the election. And what she said was, "When I left the dining room, after sitting next to Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But when I sat next to Disraeli, I left feeling that I was the cleverest woman of all England." Wow.
Now that's interesting, isn't it? See, Disraeli had spent the entire evening asking her questions and listening intently to her responses. He wanted to know everything about her, and he tried to steer the conversation towards her. Naturally, she talked, and we always feel good about talking about ourselves. So, not surprisingly, Disraeli, the person who has mastered this art of making other people feel important, he won the election. And it wasn't that Disraeli wasn't as brilliant as Gladstone. He was. However, Disraeli knew the arts of making other people feel brilliant, feel respected, feel important. And that's the key secret of charismatic leaders. This trait served Disraeli well, to the point where even Queen Victoria liked and supported him, despite the contrary advice from the people closest to her. I mean, the Queen of all England.
That's probably, at that point, she'd have been one of the most powerful people on the planet at that point in history.
Right.
And yet, through his having that manner, he had her support. And I think on just a day-to-day basis, for us, we can all relate to this. Have you ever spoken to someone who makes you feel really interesting? If you haven't, then just think about it. If you're speaking to someone and they're drawing you out and they're really finding out about you, what you need, what you want in life, what your desires are, what your fears are, where you really feel that you can open up to them, then when that person makes a suggestion to you and says, "Hey, maybe you should try this out," or "Hey, I've got something for you, maybe you'd like to hear more about it," you're far more likely to say, yeah, I'd like to hear more about it, because they've invested their time in getting to know you. So you can trust them more. You can trust that, they've cared enough to really get to know me, to really listen to me, and I really feel seen by this person. And so that lends power to any suggestions they make. And wouldn't it be good if you could have that kind of power as well, that influence, to be able to, one, make the best recommendation you can, and that's an important thing too, to be able to believe in what you're offering instead of just a one-size-fits-all thing, but also to be able to make someone else feel important. That can really make someone's day. as well as giving them a product or service that they really need.
Absolutely. And the way you can do that is just anything that draws out their needs, their values, or their desires. Now, you can even go one step further, because it's all well and good to make someone feel important, but to go in further and make that person their future selves are the most interesting thing in the world.
Right. So what do you mean by that? When we talk about making people's future selves feel important, or like the most interesting thing in the world, is, well, you're not just finding out about someone's past, it's you're finding out about their future, which then enables you to dovetail into that future what you're offering them, which is cunning, but comes from a good place.
Of course.
So we can't give you a specific list of the questions that you need to ask, because every industry is different, every individual is different. But as a rule, as Miles says, anything that can draw out their needs, their situation, what's important to them, their values, their desires, what they want, their fears, what they're wanting to avoid, that's the information that you want. And like I say, each person, each approach will be different. You'll have your own style, but develop that. Notice the questions that you're asking people, even just in daily conversations, never mind sales conversations. What is the depth of your interactions? How deeply are you getting to know people?
Right. Is it all just kind of surface level questions, or are you going deeper, deep diving down into other people's psyches, other people's identities?
Yeah. And again, that's not in the creepy way. That's not in the... like some psychology students, it would be wrong to say all of them, but a lot of psychology students and enthusiasts have this way of speaking to you, or speaking to each other, where it's like, oh yes, I'm deeply analysing you. It's not about that. It's just genuinely appreciating someone else, another human being.
Because that comes across as patronising, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And no one wants to be patronised.
Majorly.
So, you're finding out what your client does, or your potential clients, you're listing their values, their desires, you're finding out, and you're making them the most interesting person in the entire room. All that's well and good, as long as you're paying attention. Now, you need to pay attention, and this seems as really, really, like, preschool level.
Yeah, this is a baby steps point. But if you don't get it right, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you'll be stepping on people's toes. And no one likes that, because when you pay attention, you're listening. And when you talk about listening, we're not talking about, and ladies know this, when you're talking to your man and his eyes are glazed, he has weird laughs in inappropriate places, and you know when a guy is not paying you any attention and he's just concentrating in his own internal dialogue and he's just waiting for you to be quiet.
Right. Yeah.
In the nicest way possible.
Yeah, it's like, I'm waiting for... I've got this thing that I'm going to say. And especially single girls being spoken to by single guys who don't want to be single anymore. And I've seen it, thankfully I've not really done it, but, you know, these guys, they've got their line that they want to try on you. It's like, I read this thing in this book, and if I just say these magic words, it's like, boom, open sesame. And that's what they're thinking. And so... No,
ridiculous.
And yet that's the way a lot of guys think it works. And so there's this idea of, if I just say these words, these magic words, then it'll all be fine and get this little script, this little angle, and be a smooth customer, you know? And people can approach sales with that same
mindset.
Method. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's just not how humans work. Because this is all about human interaction, whether we're talking seduction or sales or friendship or any kind of interaction. It's all just human beings being human beings together. And so the key is to be flexible and in control as the salesperson, as a person leading the interaction. But you can only be flexible if you have your finger on the pulse. So you're keeping your desired outcome in mind. So yeah, you don't go in completely blank slate and go, yeah, I've got no intentions. If you're there to make a sale, that's your job. That's what you're there to do. So you know that the outcome is in mind, but you shift your focus outside of yourself and onto what's happening in real time. You're putting your focus on the other person and caring enough to pay attention to them and ask the right questions and really observe the answers so that you can tailor what you're offering to them. It all comes back to that And so drawing out that information and having the presence of mind, not just to go, cool, if I ask this clever question, it's going to draw out all that awesome information. If you're not paying attention to the information, the clever question was a waste of breath.
Exactly.
So it's asking the right questions, but especially paying attention to the information they're giving you with their words, with their demeanour, with what they're feeling and what their state is. And you can only do that if you shift the focus off your own internal dialogue and onto the other person in front of you.
It's like just respond in a really thoughtful way using their own words.
Yes.
It's literally just a complete and utter food buffet. It's a free-for-all. They give you so much information, and you just say absolutely. If you're just able to absorb that and give their words back to them, and it sounds extremely simple and basic. However, the basic ones are all usually the most powerful techniques that we can use.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complicated. There don't have to be 50 different moving parts to it. It's just the simplest state of all these rapport techniques, the things you can learn on courses and on Google and YouTube. A lot of it is true, but underlying it are these important points of getting out of your own way, for starters, and really asking the right questions and paying attention to the information you're getting so that you can make what you're offering relevant to the people.
So, that was episode 5, Rapport, What Google Won't Tell You. We will be doing many more of these as the weeks go by because rapport is such a vast topic. So, that was this week's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in.
A huge part of success is taking action right now. So come and join us in the Sales Pro community group on Facebook if you haven't already. And when you join the community, we really want to meet you. We don't just want a list of names of members who aren't participating. Just introduce yourself and tell us your favourite points that you're going to apply to your business this week and your goals and anything you want to tell us so that we can support you and continue to support your growth moving forward with this podcast. So that's the Sales Pro community group on Facebook.
Now, remember to subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio app, also on YouTube for the latest episodes. We would love to hear your thoughts and requests of what you would like to hear from us next time. See you soon.
Have fun.